Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have you here tonight. This is our masterclass, How to Become a Corporate Director. And I just want to thank all of you for spending this time with me. I want to thank my team for getting me organized and assure you that the presentation is not only going to be recorded so that you can watch the video or share the video, but also the slides, the content can be downloaded. You can have your own personal copy. I want to thank boardprospects.com for collaborating with us, and we'll talk more about our relationship with them shortly. But thank you for being on time. We're not going to punish those that are on time by making them wait for those that are late. And so let's get started. We're going to talk about the need for persons like us to serve on the boards of corporate America and to be paid for our services. Rather than start by sharing with you my resume, you can see my resume and my profile on LinkedIn. You don't need to know about my degrees and all the jobs I've had. I thought for this purpose, I would share with you all of the reasons that I should not be a corporate director. I am today on 3 corporate boards. 2 are public corporations, and I've served in total on 6 different boards that compensate directors. And the reason I wanted to share with you this perspective is to assure you that some of the barriers that we have in our minds, some of the reasons we carry around as our thoughts that would prevent us from being corporate directors are certainly not barriers in the long run as I've learned it. In the first instance, I was born to young parents who had modest means. My dad had 3 jobs and worked his way through college. And so I was not born in a royal family. I wasn't born in a wealthy family, a well-connected family, small town. I grew up in and parents who were just normal. I had some legal infractions in my late teen years. I won't go into detail there, but just suffice it to say that I had sufficient encounters with the local law enforcement community to disqualify me from many of the opportunities that I've been able to be blessed to have. I graduated from high school at 17. I didn't actually officially complete college until I was 34. And so it took me 17 years to do a 4-year degree, which some might call being a late bloomer. I had no major sponsors, no one that had experience being a corporate director took me under their wing. In fact, that's a part of what motivated me to do what I'm doing tonight. And financially, I was not the best person handling money. I didn't have a real savings account until I was 36 years old. And I share that with you to assure you that whether you are working in a mundane job or whether you are an executive already, whatever barriers you think stop you from pursuing your dream of being a corporate director, they can't be barriers that are as substantial as my barriers were. And I had to overcome the thought that I could ever be a corporate director, or I could never be a corporate director before I could pursue this dream that I had for about 25 years. So make a list of all the reasons you think you cannot be a corporate director and just put a line through them, because if I can do it, you can do it too. My motivation for doing this, which started really with a little post that I did on LinkedIn about a month ago. I was sitting somewhere thinking some thoughts, and I just decided to post something about being corporate directors. And of course, the responses have been almost overwhelming. But I wanted to do it because, first of all, there were people in my life that I knew very well who were corporate directors and who could have taken me under their wing, but they just didn't do it. And I was determined, after having been rejected by the people who were in a position to help me, I was determined to do it despite the fact that I didn't have the kind of help that I should have had. And then when I look back over the last 25 years, what I realize is that in every case, on all 6 boards that I've served on, particularly the 3 that I'm on today, which are very substantial boards, what's true is that the people that did help me were people that I barely knew. The people that I knew well that could help me didn't help me. And the people who did help me barely knew me. And I'm thinking that I owe it to them. I owe it to the people that took a risk on me, that referred me to do likewise for others. And I promised God that whatever position I was in, I would help someone else attain. Today, I've got about 5 people that I've recommended to boards. One has already achieved a directorship, 4 are in queue, they're in a pipeline. And so I'm just motivated to make a part of my legacy, not only serving as a corporate director myself, but having many others that are around the country and around the world whose success is in part attributable to the support and the guidance that I gave them. I am convinced now, based on the responses I've gotten and the email and the comments, that this is a burning issue. It's an important pursuit. It's something worthy of more than just a 1-hour webinar. And so we've put together a course, an entire course, and you'll see as we go along tonight why that's important. There are certain subjects that require much more attention than we can give in a 1-hour webinar. And so we're going to do a 15-module course called How to Become a Corporate Director. It'll be online. We'll have a basic and a premium relationship because I'm very serious and committed to this, not only to help people that I know, but also to help corporate America. Corporate America in the free enterprise system requires strong governance. And when the circles are wider, when the access is greater, when the doors are open to people that aren't really connected, it makes for a stronger free enterprise system. It makes for stronger corporate America. And it's not doing a favor for individuals as much as it is contributing to the strongest economic system that has ever been managed and created in the history of the world. America is not a perfect country, but the system that has created more wealth than any other system on the planet is still the system of choice. And the people that set the policies that we'll talk about shortly, and the people that lead these companies are the people that make it happen. And it's a blessing and it's a privilege to be a part of the leadership of that system. And so we're going to do this course in whatever areas we don't have time to dig deeply into tonight. I promise you that they'll be contained in our online course. Now, I'll tell you how I got started. I became the pastor of a small church in a small town in New Jersey in 1990. A couple of years in, one of my church members introduced me to the president of a bank right around the corner from my church. It was a small bank, 1 branch, $100 million in assets, a very small board. And the bank president was someone generally perceived by the community as someone racially insensitive. And therefore, he wasn't interested in racial diversity. He was not interested in cultural inclusion, but his bank had the responsibility of meeting the requirements of the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, which requires that banks make credit and capital accessible to their local areas and to people who otherwise would be left out. And so I met a need because I had a growing congregation in the community that would more likely than not be interested in his bank. And so I brought value to him. We're going to talk about knowing your value to these companies where we like to serve. And he offered value to me because not only did I not know banking, it was not long after I had just established a decent bank account myself. And so we had mutual interest, even though we had different cultural views. And I became a director of that bank. It was so important to me that I become a director that when I was sworn in, as it were, as a director, I invited about 300 people from my congregation to a reception at the bank. I wanted my community to see me as their representative on the board of this financial institution for the betterment of the entire community. So that was my first board. And when I got there, I had no idea that directors got paid, by the way, none. And when I talk about becoming a corporate director, an early warning is that to do it because it's a paid position is really the wrong reason. My reasons were that I wanted a chance to lead. It puts you in a position to influence important decisions that are being made, whatever the industry, whatever the kind of company. Important decisions are made at the board level. You talk about a seat at the table. That is the table that has the best seat. And so I said yes for the reason I'm hoping you'll want to say yes to being a corporate director, because first, it gives us a chance to lead and influence important decisions. And then it gave me a chance to learn. I wanted to learn banking. And what better way to learn banking than to be on the board of a bank? I was on the investment committee, I was on the loan committee, and I had never made an investment, and I had trouble borrowing money. But it was a chance to learn banking from the inside, and boy, did I learn it. And then it was a chance to leverage my relationship with the bank, to leverage my relationship with the directors, to influence activities and influence policies that impacted people in our area. One of the first things we did at that bank was set up a microloan program where we gave people in the community access to capital. And so being a director on a very small bank or major corporation, I have found offers three things: an opportunity to lead and to learn and to leverage. And that's why I enjoy my work as a corporate director. Now, I know many of you right now are executives in corporations. Many of you have MBA degrees and you've studied business in school. All of you are involved in some kind of enterprise. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I do want to make sure we understand what we mean by corporate director. Some of the email I received sounded as if people thought I was looking for someone to take a job, a full-time job. But a corporate board has some basic functions. First of all, the board does not run the company. The board sets policies for the company, policies around risk, policies around diversity and inclusion, policies around investments. That's what boards do. Boards set policy. Boards approve plans for the business. And so the executive team in a major corporation creates a plan and submits it to the board, and the board approves that plan, and then the board holds the executives, particularly the chief executive officer, accountable for that plan. When we get further into compensation, when we do our large course, we'll talk about executive compensation. I am the chairman of the compensation committee on all three of my boards, and executive compensation is tied into outcomes that flow from the plans that the board approves. So the board holds executives accountable to the plans. And then ultimately the board in a private corporation or public corporation represents the interests of the stockholders and or the owners. And so if the board makes the right decisions, the board protects the interests of those whose capital is used to build the business. And those are the core responsibilities. Of course, directors have fiduciary responsibilities. Therefore, directors have to be protected by director and officer liability insurance. We don't have time for the details tonight, but the board is ultimately the governance of the corporation. And it's a high honor, but it's also a lot of work. So there are four basic ways. People ask me all the time, how did you get on that board? Or how do I become a director in a corporation? And that's what this webinar is about, and that's what the course is about. But generally, there are four paths to becoming a corporate director. Path number one is through a search firm. many companies, including some with which I'm affiliated, will hire a search firm or a headhunter, as we commonly call it, firms such as Heidrick and Struggles, Spencer Stewart, Chris Calder Associates, an employment agency, but at a high level. And often boards of directors through their nominating committee or governance committee, or if it's a very small organization, the board as a whole will hire a firm and tell the firm, we're looking for a new director. Here is the criteria that we'd like you to use and bring us a recommendation. So that's path number one. Path number two is through professional organizations or associations. You see some listed, boardprospects.com, which is my partner now. That's an online community, an online platform. We'll talk more about board prospects, but it's a way to meet other directors, and it's a way to find out what companies are looking for directors. I also belong to the National Association for Corporate Directors. It's a membership organization. They have events and training and online resources, and they too have a profile section where people looking for directors will look at your profile to see if it matches their needs. ELC, Executive Leadership Council, focuses very specifically on African American leadership and has been very successful in helping African Americans, particularly those in the C-suite, prepare for and participate in board level leadership. There's Women on Boards, diversityinboards.com, future directors, exec ranks. These are affiliations and or organizations that one can join to find out about directorships, to learn more about corporations, and to meet people, to do what many people call networking. I'm not big on networking, but I understand the concept. These associations become path number two. Path number three is direct application. I'm on a board in New York, the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York. If you go to our website, there's a place on the website where you can actually apply to be an independent director. And there are many companies that allow you to just offer or submit a direct application. Or you may discover that a company has a need. You may read about a company having a particular challenge. You may research a company in ways that we'll describe in a bit. Research a company and discover that they have a gap. You may have heard that a company is looking for a certain type of person, and directly, not through a search firm and not through an association, you may write a nice letter. You might have 2 or 3 people to use as references, put in your resume and say, it has been brought to my attention, or I noticed that you're looking for a new director. I read an article just this week about a company that's looking for additional independent directors. And were I looking for an opportunity such as the one that I saw, I would have written a letter and said, you're looking for new independent directors. I have independent director experience. My expertise is in these areas, and I'd like you to consider me. So you can go directly to a company. But the fourth and final path is the path that is ultimately the most effective. Price Waterhouse Coopers says that 87% of director appointments come by personal referral. 87%. I guess the way I describe that more often than not is that it's an inside game, that we become directors in most instances because we have knowledge of, access to, or affiliation with someone that is in a position to recommend us. And because of that person's credibility, we are accepted by the larger group of directors or the committee that's searching on behalf of that corporation to become a director. So I emphasize with great passion this need to understand the power of personal referrals, because it's the person that knows the person that knows the person that ultimately has been the most effective in helping people like myself gain access to boards of directors. So I call this sowing seeds in the personal field. It's again what's often called networking. And so when you think about the process, how do I get from reading a magazine that motivates me to seek a directorship? And that's what happened to me. I was on the board at this bank. I didn't realize they paid me for being on the board until they asked me to fill out a W-2, and I couldn't figure out why I was filling out a W-2. Every board I had been on prior to the bank was a nonprofit board, and instead of paying me, they wanted me to pay them. I mean, I've had to donate to every nonprofit organization that I've supported. But now I'm reading this magazine in the early 1990s, and I'm discovering that the people, many of whom I knew, that serve on these large boards were doing not only great work, but they were receiving significant compensation. Directorships that I was reading about were paying part-time directors more than my full-time salary. And so the question was, how did I get from just reading about people in magazines to sitting on 3 boards today, two of which are public, one of which is a GSE, we call it. It's a government services entity. So this is the process that I recommend to anyone, especially those who are starting the process. First, identify personal relationships and contacts, people who are on boards or people who know people on boards. Not everyone wants to be on a board, but there are business people, there are political people that know directors and that are close to corporations, and those people can help us access the process. That's what you want. You want access to the process. And what we want ultimately is when we can gain audience with a corporate director, instead of running up to them saying, I want to be on a board, ask a corporate director, ask them how they feel about being a corporate director, what they like about it, what the challenges are. People like talking about their own experience. And so most of you, I've seen a lot of those who are registered for this webinar. I know many that will watch the recording, and I know that the last thing on earth you'd like to do is to walk up to somebody and say to them, would you please help me get on a board? Or more specifically, would you help me get on your board? One of my dearest friends who died a couple of years ago was one of the wealthiest men in the country. And when he took his company public, I was so excited. I said to myself, certainly this guy knows me, loves me. I know him and love him. Certainly when he takes his company public, he'll invite me to be on his board. Well, we were such good friends. He never thought about me as a director. And I didn't have the courage to say to him, I'd like to be a director. And so when they put together their first board, he called me on the phone, excited because he had appointed someone that I knew to be a director at his company. And I never once mentioned to him that I wanted to be a director. And what I realized was that it's a little awkward. It feels a little weird, particularly when you're a grown fella. If you're 17, 18 years old, you know, you'll ask anybody anything. But when you're grown and established, the last thing you want is for someone to believe that you are taking advantage of your personal relationship to pursue a personal goal. And so what I've discovered as I've looked back at my life and as I interact now with other directors is that it's all right to share with someone my desire to be a director without asking them to make me a director. And the more I ask people to describe their experience, and the more I ask people to suggest events that I should attend, organizations that I should join, the more likely it is that they'll really begin offering to help. I had an example like that when I joined the board and identified the person on that board that I wanted to help me prepare for my next move. And I did that. I said, you know, how do you like being a director? I understand you're a director at another company. What kind of company is that? And by the time I finished asking him about his experience and asking him for advice about pursuing where I wanted to go, he literally picked up the phone, called his other company, and recommended me for that board. I never went on that board, but the fact is, it was easier than asking him to do something specific, but it was more than being too shy or too bashful or feeling too awkward to ask him for help. And so the more advice I've learned, we ask other people in a position to help. If we ask them for advice, then more often than not, they'll respond with assistance. So while we're doing that, I think that this is where I needed the most help. This is where you might need help. You have to make sure you know what it is you have to offer. I told you, I was on the board of a bank. I was on the loan committee, even though I was probably not qualified to even take out a loan. I was on the investment committee, even though I had no personal investments, much less institutional investment knowledge. But what I did have was an ability to organize thoughts. What I did have was an understanding of people. What I do have is a proficiency in process. And if you go to one of my boards now and ask them about me, to the person, they will say, look, Soaries is the best director to run a meeting. I know how to run meetings. Well, when you know process and you know people, you don't have to be an expert at everything. You just have to be the best of what you do and be able to do it better than anyone else in the room. And so you want intellectual and experiential and technical and cultural specificity about yourself. You need to know what it is about you that you bring to the boardroom that is not only valuable to that organization, but also unique to that board. Now, sometimes it takes help, and I'm offering to do now for more people than I've done before because I've got little help. I'm offering to help you. You've got to learn how to repackage yourself. You have to look at your experiences in life and your expertise and figure out how those experiences and how that expertise translates into a valuable asset for an organization. I'll give you a good example. I'm on a board of a company that's doing a major technology transition. Major. When I say major, I mean it is huge. Not one member of our board has as our primary expertise technology. Not one of us is a technologist, which means that if you are a technology expert, you could be 40 years old. You could have been a consultant. Someone with a very strong technology background, someone with a high technology IQ, someone who understands technology in ways that translate into good governance, that person could become a candidate for our board. That's a technical skill that if you study our organization, it's almost self-evident that we don't have it. We had another situation on another board where we needed someone with a particular industry background because we were doing business in that industry and no one on our board had experience in that industry. And we ended up with someone whose expertise was in that industry. And so today, when you hear about diversity in the boardroom, the truth is that diversity is much broader and much deeper than gender and race. The fact is, women are in great demand on the board level. African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, we're all in great demand. But there is no company that I know of that is willing to appoint a woman just because she's a woman, or an African American just because we're African American, or Hispanic or Asian. That is added value. The reality today is that risk and technology and ethics, these are all areas of expertise which added to our identities make for great value in boards. And so what I'm offering to do, at least as often as I can, is to help you think about your value. What you take for granted may be tremendously valuable to a major corporation. And what you think is your primary credential may not be important at all. And so what's important is that you look at your intellectual, your experiential, your technical, and your cultural capacity and gifts and strengths, and package them so that your new board resume, which we're going to help you write during our course, but your new board resume, which is different than your job resume, reflects the kinds of strengths that would attract you into the boardroom. Yeah. Now, while you're doing that, there's a lot to do. You can't just wake up in the morning and hope that a board will call you. There's a lot to do. While you're doing that, one of the tips that I put on my social media platforms leading up to this webinar is Google yourself. Go to Google, type in your name, and fasten your seatbelt, because it could surprise you. What Google has to say about you could be grossly different than what you would want people to know. I have a friend that I was attempting to help a couple of years ago, and I'd known this person so long that I thought I knew everything there was to know. And then it occurred to me to Google the person, and when I did, I almost fell off my chair. Page after page after page of controversial information. And I contacted the person and said, listen, have you ever Googled yourself? Googling yourself protects you from other people knowing things about you that may be somewhat controversial before you know that that kind of information is available. So Google yourself, and then at some point, what I'll do is teach you how to manage the items on Google that you really don't want to be the dominant characterization that you want people to see. You can't erase what Google has, but there are ways to precede some of those more distasteful bits of information with more presentable. Now, let me just give you this tip in case I never see you again. In terms of social media, particularly platforms like LinkedIn, which is the preferred professional platform over Facebook and the others. LinkedIn postings, if they are designed to present you to corporate America, they don't help you if you have pictures of your birthday cake and pictures of getting a suntan on the beach, or pictures of your Moscow mule while on your cruise. No, LinkedIn is the source of choice for serious people attempting to do serious business. And I would urge you to be very strategic in your postings. And when you become a part of a vetting process for corporate leadership, this, in my view, is the highest level of leadership in the world. When you are being vetted for corporate leadership, particularly leadership in companies where people are investing millions of dollars. The state that I live in, through its pension fund, invests in one of our companies. BlackRock, one of the biggest investment banks, corporations with assets under management in the world, invest in two of our companies. When those kinds of people are trying to check you out, you don't need them to see you, doing some exotic dance on Facebook. They don't need to see you in a drinking contest on Instagram. So I can tell you now, Google yourself, but clean up all of your social media. You want the world to see you as a serious corporate leader even before you become one. So while you're doing that, you want to research companies. By researching companies, I'm saying look for gaps among directors. I mentioned if you research one of my companies, it would become obvious day one that our activities include technology, but our board does not include technologists. Research companies, look for gaps, look for their challenges, read their projected business operations. It's easy to do for public corporations, and I'll teach you how to do that. Understand the business challenges. There are companies in the media every day, challenges with ethics, challenges with race and diversity, challenges with sexual harassment. And what you want is to find a company that has a challenge that matches your strength, because it's more likely than not you can speed up the process if you can find a company that has a challenge which is either public or private. It may not be well known, but if you can find out about a challenge that a company has, it's not always negative. It may be expansion into China and you speak Mandarin. It could be working in Africa and you've got relationships in Africa. So find the business challenges that can create opportunities. Study timing. I was in the office of a bank president, and on his wall was a photograph of his entire board of directors. They were all 300 years old. Well, not 300, but 275. And I said to him, your board is aging. He said, aging. I'll be looking for new directors in the next 2 or 3 years, which was my cue to begin making a list of people that I could refer to him, because in 2 to 3 years, he'll be looking to replace some of his directors. That's a timing issue. And then understand compensation. I want to say something about this compensation issue, because so many people see being a director as only valuable because of the money that you make. And the fact is, the compensation for the part-time work, it's supposed to be part-time work, offered to directors of corporate America is relatively good. When I say relatively good, you'll make at 65, you can make more being a corporate director than you can being a greeter at Walmart or a helper at Home Depot. There's no question about that. And the fact is, it's opportune. I mean, there are many places you can go in your late 50s and 60s and get a good part-time job that's dignified and professional. That's true. But the fact is, if your primary motivation to be a corporate director is the compensation, then I'm warning you that your motives should be reconsidered. First of all, it's a lot of work. I'll go into deep detail when I have time to talk about the fact that although from the outside it looks like most corporate boards meet 4 times a year and make these big checks, the reality is there's committee work, there's prep time. On my boards, the book that I get prior to board meeting to prepare for the board meeting is generally between 300 and 500 pages. So the compensation should not be the driver. The other reality is that the compensation in public companies is often cash and equity. It's money and stock. And so you'll have to really consider the financial implications. You probably will want to talk to a professional like an accountant, because if you are directed my company and you make $100,000, that's your director fee. Sounds like a lot of money, right? Well, if half of that is in stock and half of that is in cash, you get taxed on the entire 100,000, even though you only get half of that in cash. So you're paying taxes on the stock as if it's cash, even though you don't get to cash the stock in until years later. Now, $100,000, if you live where I live, $100,000 is going to cost you about $50,000. So the cash that you get on a $100,000 director fee is really just enough to pay the taxes on the entire compensation. And so if I need the compensation to live today, if I need the $100,000, then I probably should not be a corporate director, because the truth is I'm not making $100,000, even though the compensation is $100,000. So you have to look at all of these issues, because you really can't need the money on a day-to-day basis that you earn from corporate director fees, because if you need the money day to day, then you probably will end up in a tax crisis or cash flow crisis down the road. So look at the compensation, but understand the compensation, because what you see may not be what you get. I am grateful for the experience I got at that very small bank. I'm on a very large bank board now that lends money to very small banks. And I appreciate the fact that it was my work at the small bank that really prepared me for the directorship at the large bank. Start small. You're not likely to become a director at AT&T or General Motors or Ford on your first directorship. Start small. You may not even want to be, even if you have that opportunity. Last year, about 378 new directorships occurred in Fortune 500 corporations, and 128 of those were first-time directors. But those first-time directors are generally high-level corporate executives in companies that are well-known and well-respected. But start small. Start at a community bank. Start in a regional corporation. Start on an advisory board of an investment fund. Start small. Join a not-for-profit board. Nonprofit organizations have many of the same governance requirements and will grow you into a director in ways that for-profit boards do. Nonprofit and for-profit are very similar, different outcomes, different focus, different ownership models, but same fiduciary responsibility, same ethical standards. And so start small. Attend events. NACD has great events. They have member rates and non-member rates, but get some experience, get practice. Don't assume there's nothing for you to do until you land your first corporate board. There's a lot you can do, a lot of good you can do, a lot of service you can render, and a lot you can learn on the way. Now, this should be no surprise to you. I had to make an investment. Once I decided that I wanted to be on corporate boards, I had to invest time. You don't just pop up one day and become a director. I had to invest time. I had to do research. I had to spend money. My first membership, I'm not a joiner. I'm not really a member of anything. But the first organization I ever joined, the National Association for Corporate Directors, the membership fee was $650. I never thought I'd join anything that cost that much money, but I wanted to be around directors. I wanted to learn about corporate governance. I wanted to be a part of all of their symposia. I wanted to access their webinars. And so I paid $650 to join that particular organization. And there are other options that I'll be sharing with you that cost money. But if you want to arrive at the top of the corporate ladder, then you've got to invest in time, you've got to invest in doing research, and you'll have to spend a couple of bucks from time to time to reach your goal. The bottom line, however, is belief. I'm a preacher by trade, and I teach people that life's outcomes depend upon life's beliefs. You have to believe there's a board waiting for you. You have to believe that. You may not know anyone right now. Well, you do. You know me, and I'm on 3 corporate boards. You may not think you have access to anything. You have got to believe that there is a board that would make a perfect match for your skills and that you could bring value. You have to believe there's a board that needs you. When I first got on one of my boards, I walked in the room and said, oh my goodness, all of these people are experts at finance, but I'm an expert at people. I'm an expert at culture. I'm an expert at process. I'm an expert at organization. And so what I bring is as valuable to that board as their contributions. So you have to believe that. And if you don't believe it, I'm going to help you believe it. And then you have to know you have plenty of time to achieve your goal. Time is on your side. If you're under 70 years old, time is on your side. If you're under 50 years old, time is really on your side. If you're over 70 years old, you have some time, but not as much time as the others. But it takes time. It can take 3 to 5 years to go through the process. I'm going to work with you for 3 to 5 months if you'll let me do it, but time is on your side. We are experiencing economic shifts. We're experiencing global alignments, but what is true is that the free enterprise system is here to stay. And you have time to do it. You have time to do it right. Businesses are growing, and the average age of corporate directors today is 62, which means that there's going to be a need to replenish directorships all across the board, and you have time to do it. Just make up your mind. You've got to believe that it may not happen in 3 months. It could. It may not happen in 3 months, but it can happen in time. So I talked about board prospects. Let me tell you what I learned when I joined Board Prospects. I learned that unlike any other platform, this online association gives me access to people that I'd like to meet and people that like to meet me. It gives me information about board opportunities, not only corporate directors, but advisory boards and other associations. It gives me information through educational resources. They have a board university, and they literally reached out to me and said, if you're trying to help more people access board opportunities, we'd like to help you help them. And so they have offered me and my network an opportunity to not only join their free platform. I joined for free. I like free things. And they offered me an opportunity to not only invite my network to join for free like I did, but then to upgrade to their premium program. They have a premium membership that gives you an expanded profile that increases the likelihood of corporations finding you. It's a marvelous tool. It's built with algorithms that maximize the use of technology. They've got 17,000 members. And so it's literally an online community that's interactive all the time. And they're offering all of my network a 30% discount on their premium membership. Use the code Soaries30. And they're going to host the webinar that we're doing tonight on their board university. I want to thank Mark Rogers and his entire team for their partnership. So go to boardprospects.com, join for free, and after you learn it and figure it out, upgrade using the Soaries30 discount code. All right, I think that's about all I have time for tonight. We're going to do a master class. It's going to be available in September. I'm going to go deeply into ethics and risk. I'm going to talk about how to package your resumes, 15 modules. We're going to do this, and then we're going to offer an opportunity for a few people to have their resumes repackaged to also help you introduce yourself to various people. I'm going to give recommendations to all of those that finish my course. Will be easy for me to recommend because I'll know what you know, and there are corporations right now waiting for me to give them recommendations of prospective directors, and I'm happy to do that. I am more excited about this than I am even getting on more boards. I've got 4 people right now in the pipeline recommended to various boards, and I think my legacy is much more important in this area than serving on more boards. You don't need to know what schools I went to and what boards I served on. I want people to know that scattered across the country in corporate America, there are people who are successful directors because I've been able to help them. I feel good about it already, and it hasn't even happened. So go to my website, dbsoaries.com. We'll be sending you email to let you know about the course. And if it's 1 person or 100 people, it doesn't matter to me. I am absolutely passionate about helping people experience this marvelous blessing that I have at being at the table, at the real table where corporate decisions are made, protecting the investors, making for opportunities, and contributing to the greatest economic system ever constructed by humans in the history of the world. So God bless you. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. If I have time for questions, I'll answer a couple, but thank you for being with us and registering in advance. And I look forward to talking to you in the future. Let me see if we have do we have a question? Oh, we're out of time. All right. We're out of time. So thank you so much. And I'll meet you at boardprospects.com. And then I'll send you information about our masterclass course starting in September.